Well, we saw quite a lot of projects by Frank Lloyd Wright until now for rich clients, huge houses, big corporate buildings. And what about the design for smaller houses for the general population? What was his approach to that kind of design and middle class?
Well, it was very much the ideology of modernism that it was for everybody. The whole modernist notion is to do away with a hierarchical society with an aristocracy. And so the democratic vision is one of equality. And so then these architects who are very much a part of that ideological movement of modernism and the modern democratic vision are making homes for rich people. Well, what happens is that it's usually, you might say, upper middle class people, the kind of people that would commission a home by a cutting edge architect. And the very rich want a neoclassical home, and the middle class people don't want to be different. They don't want to stick out on their block as, having some weirdo architect doing their home. That's not their community of their cultural community. So it's been a problem for architects, and Europeans address it. We have the Corbusier's work toward houses for everybody, the vision of prefabrication, the Wiesenhof exhibit, each of the major European modern architects doing a section of it. And Wright thought about that as well. And he develops what he calls Usonian houses. So Usonia is his name for America. He says, we don't have a name, the United States, what's that? So it's a play on utopia. And he does a series of houses. Here's a book on them, the Usonian Houses. So these are houses for a democratic America. And the most famous one, and really the first one, is the first Jacobs House in Madison, Wisconsin, 1937. And he claims he built it for $5,000. So, does that include the land? Things like that. But the point is, it is very economical. And so he's got slab on grade, and then all glass or all brick. If you have brick and then you frame a window into that, that's where it gets expensive. All of a sudden the bricklayer can put that up, just zip, but when you start framing a window, it really slows down. So no punctures. So, and then a flat roof. And of course the flat roof is always an ideal of modernists, but they're going to leak. But today we can get away with it because we have roofing materials keep getting better. But this is First Jacobs House, and it shows this vision. Now, here's a plan of First Jacobs House. We've got our living room, kitchen, and then shotgun corridor with bedrooms. And that's sort of how he does them. There's several variants on that, but that's basically the idea. And again, we see all brick, no puncture. We've got a brick column here and glass in between, but then our glass wall, and then our economical flat roof. So we start with slab on grade. We put down gravel. We put in our formwork. We lay in tubing for our radiant floor heating. We're going to pump warm water through here. That'll make the floor warm. He says if your feet are warm, you're warm. And
that was quite advanced for the time, right?
Yeah.
Was he one of the first people
well,
using it?
No, it was around. He didn't. He sort of pioneered, but didn't invent it.
Right.
And of course, your children are playing on the floor, and so you put down slab, and then you put down rug, and you skip the whole thing with wood floors and all that, which is very widely used to this day. Here he's scoring a hexagonal grid in here. This is one of his hexagonal houses. We'll look at one in a few minutes. Then we've got our walls, and the walls are not stud wall 2x4, 16-inch on center with sheetrock on either side, but rather board and batten. So we have board, joint, board. And here's some of the details for these board and batten. And he tried to make very universal details that could be milled economically, thinking of an industrial process. And then there are a whole series of these. There are many, many of them. And there are several basic types. There's an L-shaped, there's a linear one, there are hexagonal grid ones. And so these are the typical plans. And then there's an interesting one. The Jacobs want another house. So this is the second Jacobs house. This is a little bit different. This is one of the first passive solar houses. So we're nestled up into the hill. And so this is north. And north has, it's cold. So we use earth burn for insulation. Now we're facing south. And watch what happens. In the summer, the sun is high and it's kept out of the house. In the winter, the summer is low, and it can come in and heat the slab and hold the heat overnight. So to this day, that's how we do a passive solar, and it's totally worked out in 1943 by Wright. Now, a little play with form. This is the, what if you took the first Jacobs house and you curved it? What if you took the second Jacobs house and you flattened it out? Turned out when Wright makes one of these curved houses, and we can do it today much easier with the computer, he just takes a straight house and
squeezes it, right?
Yeah, just bends it around a curve and then everything radiates. But this is this.
Right.
This, and this, or this, and this. This is this. Just.
Then we can see an early version of the Guggenheim right here, with the big
Yeah.
circle and the smaller circle next to it, the staircase and the intersection between them.
So this is the Usonian Houses. Wright does quite a few of them. He picks up the idea again in the 50s, which we'll mention. So are houses by prominent architects only for the rich? And how can architects reach more people? I mean, to this day, we have this problem of how can we bring what we have to offer to more than just wealthy clients in the Hamptons.
Indeed. And I was wondering what happened to these Usonian houses. How many of them were built, and what's the fate of these designs?
Well, quite a few were built, and some of them, fall apart beyond repair. But for the most part, there's always some wealthy person to buy it and restore it. So Wright is so much in demand that a lot were lost, let's say, in the, the 50s through the 80s. But in the past 20 years, people do anything they can to save a Wright house, or even if they totally rebuild it, they'll say it's original.
It is. And was he part of that construction, or he would just sell someone the design, a contractor or a client, and they would build it themselves? He
was, let's say, minimally involved in a lot of them. And then later, we'll talk about the 1950s, he does what's called the Usonian automatics. And there it's very clear. He sends you the drawings, you find a local contractor.
And you build it yourself.
You build it yourself, and the blocks you use come from a company of one of his apprentices. So that they deliver the blocks, concrete blocks, he delivers the drawings, and you get a local contractor to put it together.
I see. Kind of like an IKEA furniture, right?
Right, IKEA houses, right.
Do it yourself. And how about this idea, the Usonian, it was kind of an utopia that he designed or imagined. What happened to this Usonian project, when he was thinking about the country itself and himself as the architect of the entire country and so on? So did this idea go anywhere further, or it just became...
Yeah, it's called the American suburbs.
Oh, right.
So Wright did not like cities. And his vision was that very much like the American suburb, but you really should have enough land, maybe 2 or 3 times what people have today, 3 or 4 times what people have today, so you can grow some of your own food. So in that sense, it's this Jeffersonian vision. So Jefferson's notion was if you're in a city, you're dependent on all these systems, somebody can control you. Someone says, we've got your medical service, we've got your electricity, we've got your food, you do what we say. And, we live that way in our urban conditions today, and, hopefully it's benign, sometimes it's not. But if you say, well, I'm growing half the food I grow myself, so we got, to hell with you. We're self-reliant here. So Wright has a lot of that Jeffersonian vision of this kind of rural semi-independence.
And interesting, a lot of his projects were not in urban areas. Like we see the Guggenheim is in New York, but he didn't even want it to be in New York. He wanted to be in the middle of, he didn't want it to be part of the urban grid. He wanted to build it inside Central Park. So
Right.
a lot of his projects are built in the rural. Like he hardly ever has an urban project, like with actual urban context. So very much he was the kind of the anti-urban architect. Wouldn't you define him this way?
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So next we'll talk about one of his larger houses, the Hanna House.